There you go. Okay.
I'll tell you when I get it. Well, mine is.
Yeah, so it'll be like a 10-second delay.
We're waiting for John.
You might have to refresh the page.
Oh, yeah, there's no wireless.
There we go.
Or wireless here?
There just might be. It's right over there. Yeah, we're online. Stream is live. See Niels.
There we go.
Okay. You want this on, John? 5, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, it's working. You can see that. You see his hands moving.
Oh, yeah.
Moving. Yeah, that's great. Well done. Is this your first time doing this project?
Hello, everybody.
It's a year of
I
first.
did the sound, but this
Yeah, you
is.
didn't do it, yeah.
So we'll get this meeting started. Or we'll continue to talk to each other. And this is being live streamed, by the way. So you can watch this on your phone if you want. It's more real that way. So interestingly enough, I live stream calculus lectures, and the kids that are in the room with me will actually watch it on their laptops instead of watch me, because they can see it better. I don't know why, because whenever I look at myself on YouTube, there's some setting, I think, because and I have to go into my settings because it adds 50 pounds.
Can anyone?
That's not me. That's me in a few years.
What's the title of it?
I don't even know. I think if you want to do the Biosphere website.
Next year, we're actually going to bring less tasty snacks so that people don't hang around the snack table. I'm buzzing.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That makes me seem busy. All the buzzing.
Stop going that way. Go that way. Go that way.
Is it? Oh, you want me in the center?
Yeah.
Is it really that? Okay.
Well, don't go to that side.
Okay. I can only stand here.
Well, in that area.
What's the point? I really wasn't going to dance anyway. So welcome to the Biosphere Annual General Meeting. There's lots of fun stuff. We have audited books. Actually, do we have an agenda that we can bring up? Or is that the first thing? So my name is John Rogers. I'm the vice chair of the board. They said got candy for the night, I guess? Or did you say, I will give you candy? I can't remember. So I've been doing 18-hour days. We've been in the middle of planting, actually. So yeah, I left my wife out planting soybeans tonight. A little bit of a delayed Mother's Day gift, I guess. A bit of quality time, alone time in the tractor. Yeah, and welcome to spring too. Okay. We don't have an agenda. Totally lost without that. All right, yeah. Yeah, so like I say, 18-hour days, so I might be a little bit sleep deprived. I might be a little bit more punchy than normal. Oh, call to order and welcome. I'm in charge of that. Good, check that one off. Okay. Review and approval of minutes from the AGM of March 23rd, 2017. Elizabeth, you're in charge of that. This is Elizabeth Thorne, the chair.
We are looking forward to a good discussion. As John mentioned initially, this is a legal requirement for a registered charity, and so we have a number of business items to get through, and then we have a presentation of the operational results. We also have a guest speaker tonight who's going to be speaking on water quality. We have done water testing for the last 5 years, and those results will be shared. And following that, we'll have a chair's report and questions and answers from the audience. So if you could make a note of your questions as we go along, that would be great, and we'll make sure that we provide fulsome answers, because I know some people have some questions that they want to ask, and we're very pleased that you're here so that you can pose these questions. All right, so may I have a motion to approve the minutes from last year's AGM? Jan moves, seconder, and Brian seconds. All in favor? If you've got voting cards, yes, okay. Motion carried. Thank you. I would now like to introduce our auditor from BDO, which is a national level firm, and it's Tracy Smith, and she will present our audited financial statements. Tracy?
And so Jeremy just reminded me, this is being broadcast right now, and you can actually watch the live stream from the Biosphere website. And if you wanted to review anything later, this is archived on YouTube. It'll show up on the website as well. Tracy, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the board for inviting me here this evening to do a presentation of the financial statements. As Elizabeth said, my name is Tracy Smith. I'm a partner of BDO Canada, and I'm a partner in the Owen Sound office. I've been asked to give a very brief, high-level overview of the financial statements that have been prepared by the Biosphere's management. Our audit report is on page 2 and page 3. BDO Canada was appointed auditor for 2017 to provide an independent opinion on these financial statements that were prepared by the Biosphere's management. An audit is the highest level of assurance that a CPA firm can provide. It is the Biosphere management's responsibility to prepare these financial statements, and as the auditor, it is my responsibility to give an opinion on these financial statements that have been prepared by management. We perform procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and the disclosures in these financial statements, and we believe that we have obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to provide an opinion. On page 3 is our opinion. In common with many charitable organizations, the organization derives revenues from fundraising and donations, which is not susceptible to complete audit verification. So there is what's called a soft qualification that you'll find in many charitable financial statements. In our opinion, except for this qualification, we believe that these financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. On page 4, you'll find the balance sheet. So this is a snapshot in time of the financial position of the Biosphere. So this is a snapshot in time as of December 31st, 2017, which is the year end for the Biosphere. On December 31st, 2017, the Biosphere had 130,301 in cash in the bank. However, it should be noted that this was funds that were received for specific expenses for grants that was paid out in January to March according to those funding agreements. So you'll see this also as a liability in the deferred revenue in the liability section. 135,841 was grant money that was received in advance to pay those expenses from January to March, which is the funding year of the funders. On December 31st, there were accounts receivable 74,168. Almost 20,000 of this is from HST, which was recovered after the year end from the government. And 54,718 related to grants that were still to come in, holdbacks from grants for projects where the expenses had been incurred before December 31st. The accounts payable and accrued liabilities of 13,007 is just normal trade trade payables that were paid after the year end. And lastly, on the balance sheet, you'll find unrestricted funds of $55,621. These are the fundraising and non-specific grants that have been saved for future expenses of the organization. On page 5, sorry, on page 6, we're going to skip over to page 6, is the revenue and expenses for the year. So this is a consolidated statement. So this is all the programs and projects that the Biosphere had during 2017. Total revenues for the year were $490,910. 98% of that revenue was generated for specific grants relating to specific projects. Expenses for the year totaled $504,508. And the Biosphere ended the year with excess expenses over revenue of $13,598,000. Therefore, the Biosphere did have to draw on funds that they had saved from prior years from fundraising and donations from prior years. So they were drawing on those funds. So that includes a very high-level overview of the financial statements. I'm not going to go through the rest of them. And that is the position as of December 31st, 2017.
Thank you, Tracy. The audited statements, that's always the highlight, isn't it? All right. Next on the agenda is nominations to the Board of Directors. Oh, motion to approve. Yes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, Jan and Bridget, Brooklyn, you got that? You sure you want to sit up here? Brooklyn, you want to stand up, please?
Oh, okay.
Stand up. Brooklyn is our student director, and we're delighted to have her. She's done a very good job with the Easter egg campaign, and among other things in terms of taking minutes. And that's one of the events that Tracy was referring to. There are really two that we use to raise funds. The raffle, which is coming up shortly, and also the Easter egg. So, thank you, Brooklyn, for recording those names. Bridget, second. All in favor? Okay, carried. And the approval of the auditors for next year. Okay.
Can I have a motion to appoint BDO as auditors for 2018?
Sure.
All right. All right. Dale moves and Jan seconds. Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
Okay, two board members. Oh, sorry, my name is Arlene Kennedy and I'm the chair of membership. Two board members are in the middle of their 2-year term and do not have to be re-elected for 2018. They are John Rogers, vice chair and treasurer, myself, chair membership, and Dale Scott over here. This is Dale, who is the chair of governance. These board members will not be up for re-election until the spring of 2019, so come along there and you can participate in that with us. Should be a good annual meeting again. The 2-year terms of 3 board members have expired and they are standing for renewal. Elizabeth Thorne, our chair, is standing again. Mike Workington, who is the chair of the Dark Sky Committee and also manages our amazing raffle fundraiser. Mike unfortunately couldn't make it here with us tonight because he is working in another city. And Tyler Miller, who is the director at large. Tyler is at the end of the table here. Board members who have been appointed during the year and are to be confirmed are as follows. Brooklyn Houghton, our student director and secretary. Thank you, Brooklyn, again, especially for being the secretary. The minutes are always fun to record. And there are two new entrants to the board who are now standing for election. One is Mike Campbell, and he did have a previous commitment, so Mike will not be joining us this evening. And the other is Bill Graham, and Bill is here. Bill, would you stand up, please? Where are you? There he is. This is Bill Graham. We're very grateful to have you join us. Your expertise is very valued. Two board members are not standing for re-election. Stu Guthrie served as treasurer, and we thank him for his contributions, and Carol Herman served as director at large. The board would like to express its appreciation for their efforts, for their advice and support they provided during their tenure. It was invaluable, and I would like to propose a motion to accept the slate of directors for the coming year as presented, including the designation of vice chair and treasurer positions on behalf of the nominations committee. And so I'm moving that, and I would like a seconder. Thank you, Dale. So Dale is seconding Brooke. And let's have a vote on that. Aye. Thank you. That's carried. Respectfully submitted. Thank you.
Musical chairs here. Okay, now we'll turn to the operations report, where we get down to the explanation of what we've accomplished over the last year. And for that, I'd like to introduce you to our Executive Director, Dr. Catherine McLeod. We have been thrilled, especially me, to have Catherine join us. I know, we all have been thrilled. So Catherine has been with us now for 2 years, and so with that, I'll pass you over to her.
Well, thank you all for coming. I guess I'll bring up. So let me just start with the Biosphere Association's mandate, which is to build community commitment and capacity in order to do conservation and sustainable development while achieving concrete environmental goals. Sure. Now, in the northern First Peninsula that we're all familiar with, it's one of the highest concentrations of rare species in all of Canada. It's a very unique location, very beautiful location, part of the Niagara Escarpment Rural Biosphere Reserve, and also Ontario's Greenbelt. So we all know it's an extremely important area to protect. The Biosphere Association has been in action for 16 years. We've heard the audited financial statements that we've had every year. And this year, 92.5% of all of our funds are spent directly on the project, so on the ground. Our action areas are coming up, but I put this in because I want to mention that although we have the strong board and staff, our success really depends on the support of volunteers. We have more than 87 volunteers that are active in our organization. So some of them here, 10 astronomers, 6 water testers, 5 Eco-Adventure Advisory Committee members. We have over 40 frag fighters throughout the year, 9 board members, 5 Easter egg volunteers, and 12 force fair volunteers. And I also want to mention that in calculating our volunteers, it's much more than 87. You can include, for example, 45 farmers that we work with closely in their operations. So our areas of action are several. First is supporting the community in voluntary conservation and restoration. Now, clearly conservation and restoration is very important, but I really want to emphasize we don't own land. We work with people who have the want and desire to make change in their own neighborhood. So we're working with individuals, with community members,
that want to do some action in the environment. We do ecological monitoring and work towards improving scientific understanding of the natural landscape. We involve youth, and education is extremely important in all that we do. And our last actionable area is sustainable economic development, which will be more within the list report. So I want to start with supporting the community in taking on voluntary actions. And I'd like to start with our farming community. We have helped develop a community of practice in the Northern Bruce Peninsula, largely through several measures that bring farmers together with academics, with experts in industry, and government experts. Bringing the farmers together with this group of experts to share information, to share their experiences, so that they can tackle all the diverse emerging issues that farmers today must face. One example is our Canola Club group meeting that we also had over the past year that is tackling this emerging issue that is threatening our canola crop. We also do site tours that bring farmers and other people out to see particular areas where we have been active with the community on various facets. So let's start with some of the work that we do with crop producers that have indicated that they want to do something to improve operations, both for themselves economically and for the environment. So we act to facilitate this desire of farmers to do something different, to take on some form of best management practice that they haven't done in the past. An example is low tillage. So trying out, for example, in a picture where we have the tractor with his bundle of seed in the yellow contraption, sowing the seed into the ground with minimal disturbance to that soil. So that is one way that we have facilitated that. We have two demonstration sites of low-till practices. One includes a comparison of tillage practices, traditional practice to low-till practices. Another risk management practice that some farmers have taken on are windbreaks. So in this image, we have captured just an example of some of the movement of soil due to wind. So wind erosion, piling up the soil, moving it off the farm properties and into the ditches. In order to prevent the soil erosion, so the loss of very valuable resource, we have started to develop windbreaks. So we're working with farmers that would like to have windbreaks to reduce soil erosion. And this month, I think next week, we're going to be starting planting on some of these farmers' properties. 13 different farmers have also taken on clover seed in order to put on a cover crop or to improve soil conditions by sowing into their pastures, so as a pasture improvement. So cover crops is another area that we are working with farmers to improve and maintain good environmental conditions on their farms, which feeds back into their own economic prosperity.
You get to learn all kinds of exciting things.
Oh, it gets better.
And
here's another, what I think is a very exciting best management practice. It's called Biosphere for short. It's a development of a water and sediment control basin. So if we look at this farmer's field, what we will see is movement of water that occurs downfield, focused along this line towards the ditches and the channels, the streams in the area. In order to prevent that movement of water off the field and into the ditch, which moves very quickly as runoff, what we want to do, and taking with it soil, and valuable farm soil, is we produced what is truly a basin in which that water will slow down and infiltrate much more quickly into that basin. Once the water is slowed down, that sediment begins to, that soil begins to sediment out, and remains within that field. The water is then released much more slowly into the stream. So that prevents that loss of soil. On the right here, we have a gauge that's set up to monitor the amount of soil that is accumulating in that water and sediment control basin. So we can see the action of that best management practice. So we have one of these demonstration sites set up in the North Bruce. Next slide. So here is some of totaling up our best management practices that we've worked with crop producers with. So the Wascop site, we have the 2 low-till sites, we have 13 cover crop or pasture improvement sites, which will build soil for the farmers. We also have alternate soil water drain control sites. That's a very long word. What it is where the farmers have drains that move the water quickly off their land, we put in a control structure so that the farmers can actually slow down that water from moving out of his soil. So we have 3 of those sites, so that keeps the moisture, keeps the nutrients within the soil. We have the 5 windbreak sites that we are setting up this year, 3 drain control sites, and we also have in total then, 19,100 spent in 2017 just on materials and supplies to help farmers, crop producers, take on a new best management practice.
From an environmental perspective, what is important that I learned when I became involved is that
the farmers, of course, have to place nutrients on the soil in order for the crops to grow, so phosphorus and nitrates, etc. So when the soil blows into the streams, it takes with it the phosphorus and nitrates, which, of course, increased phosphorus will give rise to algae bloom. The soil itself will cover the stream bed and inhibit the flourishing of the macroinvertebrates, which are part of the food chain. So this is why we are creating a win-win, less environmental damage to the stream bed and less nutrients going into the water, as well as farmers retaining valuable soil.
Oh, that's my mom. Now we're going to move on to our work with with cattle producers. I assume using the term cattle producer is fine. I thought it was a nice contrast to crop producers. So in here we want to work with those cattle producers that want to make a change. And one of the key ones is our installation and use of solar-powered watering systems and fencing. So moving the cattle to a water source that is not the stream. So you can see in the left-hand picture, cattle, in order to access the water, have to go down the stream bank into the stream channel, causing significant erosion of the stream bank. Soil and nutrients moving into the stream, and along with the cattle contributions to the stream in terms of nutrients. So for some farmers that are very interested, we have been able to create build fences that keep the cattle from the stream, and install alternate watering systems for the cattle. In this image here, we do have, in this case, an emergency access. So if there is some situation that comes up, and the cattle do need watering from the stream, we have shaped the slope and arbored it and the stream. When that gate swings open, the cattle has access to a small portion of a stream in which their impact will be very limited. And we have installed solar-powered watering systems, a design from our program director, Melissa Monk. So you can see the cattle have access to clean water They don't have to be traveling up and down the stream banks, which can stress them, and they don't have to be standing in water in order to access the water. All improvements to cattle health. In the left-hand side, in 2017, we also installed a frost-free watering system for a farmer that is pasturing his cattle through the winter. And so those cattle are able to access a water supply right through the winter without having to access surface waters in the stream. Now, some of the improvements that we then make once we have the fencing in, we then go about restoring those stream channels as well. So this is just one image from Judges Creek showing the situation beforehand. You can see along the banks when those streams are dredged, the materials are typically just dumped along the banks of the channel. So yes, you can.
So I have urgent news from Ottawa. Griffin and Zach have won a bronze for their Club Root and Canola project. Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, that project was sort of a cooperative effort between the Biosphere and crop advisor and soil sampling, and it's quite a long elucidation of stuff, but good for them.
I didn't put any of those shots in. I'm sorry, because they were very interesting. The drone imagery. That's well done. Yes, back to Judges. So this is Judges Creek before we've done any restoration. If you can click again, Elizabeth. We have now put up the fencing and we have installed cattle watering systems. And in the channel itself, we've removed the dredging piles, which can affect the hydrology of the system. We have created a more gentle stream bank profile in order to prevent erosion and then seed it in. So if you press again, the results are an improved channel system. If you have vegetation that will shade the water, maintain cool water temperatures, the water can be able to flow along the center of the channel for the most part, with reduced sediment coming in, so lower turbidity. Now, here is another aerial shot. In this shot, we have put a fence all the way around this surface water feature. This is a spring site, and this is in the headwaters of Judges Creek, a very exciting feature in which a cold water spring is issuing in several places along the stream, very cold water, perennially, and creating what is a very deep pond feature. In this area, cattle have been accessing this feature to drink from. And you can see some of the exposed sediments from that trampling, so they have now been fenced out. They're all congregating in this white area here, which is one of the cattle watering systems. So those cattle now have an access to clean water that they're not walking in and doing other things in. And the area here, very large area, is now regenerating. So we have some planting that's gone on, some seeding, and this area will regenerate very nicely, protecting a very important and unique feature of the Bruce Peninsula, which is a karst feature. As we have been constructing our alternate cattle watering systems, we now have a total of 66 systems. What we realized is that we needed help to help the farmers, assist the farmers, particularly in opening up the systems in the spring and closing them in the fall. In 2017, we obtained grant support to hire and train a local farmer, Todd Thompson, like pointing a finger. That's not very polite. Who then could assist us in helping the farmers maintain their systems, open their systems, close their systems, which goes to the point of maintaining this best management practice, and that's extremely important. It would be to not if we got the systems in, they were used for a year or 2 or 3, and then left by the wayside. So Todd has been an incredible support for the Biosphere Association and for the farmers to keep these very effective systems running. A very exciting thing that's going on, started in the fall and continuing on to the spring, is a biofiltration testing of a system that will filter runoff from cattle manure storage site. So in this system, you'll see the stream in behind. We have effluent, for lack of a better term, nutrient-rich waters coming towards the system, filtering through a top-secret media, wood chip, chosen wood chips, and filter sand. The secret formula. With then the water, much cleaner, being released to flow, to continue on to the stream. So this is a professor that has been designing this system, Professor Hewlett Mutis, and his grad students, who are testing out this system. They've used this system in truck washing stations. It's the first time they're using it in this particular situation. And so they're going to be collecting water as the nutrient-rich water comes in, and then collecting water out the other end, using 2 automatic samplers, water samplers. They're called ISCO samplers, and they will collect water over a period of time, 24 days, once a day, water coming in, water going out, to see how effective that system is at cleaning nutrient-rich water.
Yeah, I'm very thrilled about this. I love partnerships between the academic community and a not-for-profit, and of course the funders. I think that triangle is very, very powerful. So working with our farmers, they're getting the latest leading edge and research, and the academics are being informed by on-the-ground practice, which is really cool.
And he has a master's student working with him, so we are going to get a formal master's report, master's dissertation from this work that will go a long way to raising the profile of the good work that's being done on the First Peninsula.
Will we be in a paper?
Very likely. Professors like when their master's students write papers.
Publish your paper.
All right, so this is the sum up, which causes lots of words. So we've got, in 2017, we had 6 solar-powered cattle watering systems installed with 1.88 kilometers of fencing to exclude 850 cattle approximately. So $87,000 in 2017 went to constructing. So it's just the materials and construction, fencing and solar-powered watering systems. 23,000 went to the biofiltration testing with the master's report that comes out of it. So from 2012 to present, we have 66 cattle watering systems, more than 12 kilometers of fencing installed, and more than 5,200 cattle excluded from our streams in those important spring areas. So by magic calculations, we have a reduction every single year of 1.12 tons of phosphorus. That amount being kept out of our stream systems, which means, as Elizabeth was describing, that we are going to have fewer algal blooms, fewer anaerobic conditions within our stream systems, better aquatic habitat, and that is going to make its way down to Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, improving the water quality along our beaches.
Catherine, the one other thing about that is that phosphorus that doesn't escape the land actually helps the farmer because he either doesn't have to put as much phosphorus on or he gets better growth because the phosphorus has not escaped.
That's actually a very good point. There are so many ways in a complex ecosystem that we are part of in measuring and understanding the full impact, all that good impact, and the variety of ways that we have that good impact from simple actions of individuals with a huge cumulative effect.
It's at the point in terms of sort of emphasizing in terms of the willingness, working with willing landowners. Farmers are approaching us often and saying, can you help us? We know that this is something that we would like to see because it creates economic benefit for us, but also we are good stewards of the land and we really don't want our cattle in the streams if at all possible. And so they are approaching us, and actually we have farmers with South Bruce approaching us as well.
I mean, and I think that's the main thing for all of us and all that we do, is that we have the knowledge for the most part, but it is great to have that help to put our willingness into action. One of the other things that we have done in 2017 is taking a look at the stream channels that have been dredged throughout our agricultural area. Here's an example of a drainage channel in one location. And what we have done is modified, if you can change, modify the stream channel to what's called a two-stage design. So we have the lower stage, in which for most of the year, that's where your water is flowing. You're flowing in a very small, narrow area, and by keeping it small and narrow, you're going to have good water flow. And then we have an upper stage, and then it goes up to the main part of the land. In this second stage, what we've done is expanded the capacity of that channel to handle high water levels. So in spring melt, when there's higher water levels, there will be much more greater capacity for that channel to handle those high water levels before flooding occurs. So if you click this little button again, here is an aerial view of one of our two-stage channels. So it might be hard to see. This is upstream. Come down here. Do you see that notch? That is the two-stage component, and it comes all the way down. It's vegetated down, so it's harder to see. But what that does is help increase the capacity of that channel to hold a larger volume of water. So if you click it again, we're going down to ground level now. Here is that two-stage section that we were able to construct. If you look upstream, where there is no two-stage level, that is where the water is spilling over the banks. It's beyond the channel capacity and flooding out into the farmers' fields. So two-stage channels are one way that we're trying to help the whole community deal with the fluctuation in water levels over the course of the year and try to reduce the amount of flooding and the amount of time that our agricultural land is in flood. It also, by keeping a narrow channel in that system, we are moving sediments along naturally in that function so that we have a reduced need for dredging. Within this work that we've been doing for water quality, we are also working with homeowners within our septic systems projects. So again, we are recruiting willing homeowners who want to do something to help the environment and help themselves and deal with their septic systems. So we are working within what we call the Six Streams area, which includes that central agricultural dominated component of the Bruce Peninsula. And we're working at high-risk sites, those homes that are near some surface water, so a stream or other surface water feature. Sites that are at risk for contaminating either the surface or the groundwater through underperforming septic systems. So we start with education. So we've held in 2017 3 septic system maintenance workshops to help people understand how their septic systems work and how to maintain it. And by golly, it's really hard to get new pictures of septic systems. I don't think when you're out in this type of workshop, you're taking pictures very often. So we got our standard picture of a look at a septic system at one of the workshops. And so we were able to convey in a very real way, looking down into a system, what the proper function is and how to maintain it. We have also provided 30 pump outs for the high-risk areas. And in that, what's really important is that the homeowner has a site-specific recommendation. You can call it inspection to tell them what's going right and what's going wrong and how it can be improved. But it's site-specific. So it gives the homeowner really knowing their own system and into action to maintain it. And for those systems that have failed, we have in 2017 provided 10 incentives to help offset the costs to replace failed systems. So we're getting those systems that are not working properly, that are allowing nutrients out into the environment in a high sensitive, high risk area. We're getting them with a new system that will help to maintain good water within the area. So over 2017, we have spent $50,000 just on the services and incentives. So these numbers are not including staff time. And over the last 2 years, that's $100,000. We have another $50,000 this year that will go into more workshops, pump outs, and incentives. Now let's move on to our invasive Phragmites program. And I always like to keep it at eradication because I am very hopeful. But we are working with communities and individuals to help identify, survey, control, and follow up with Phragmites in our area. So some of our results for 2017, we have been working for many years in the North Bruce. In 2017, we also started work in the northern part of South Bruce. So in South Bruce, because it's a new area, we have identified in our survey 708 patches. In our surveys in the North Bruce, 8 patches, new patches have been identified in 2017. In total, the area that was surveyed was at least 11,300 hectares that were walked and looked to identify where Phragmites is. And then we have a chemically cut 102 of the patches in 2017, 46 of them are in the North Bruce. We've also treated chemically some dry sites, so 66 dry sites in Northern Bruce, where we can actually use an herbicide safely. So here's an example just to show you some of the difference it can make to a homeowner, to somebody enjoying the coastline. This is just an example from Red Bay, before the cut and after. So that you can see what a difference it makes for someone that would want to use that shoreline, for the aquatic habitat, and an opportunity for a native species to recolonize the area.
And that lovely Phragmites creates a monoculture that kills everything. It's really insidious because it sends out, it has a root system that can go down about 8 feet. It sends out poison, killing anything. And then it has seeds and lots of, like, thousands of little seeds that it spreads that way too. So it's really an insidious plant.
Yeah,
They also are so dense that a couple of our staff last year found things like baby fawns caught and dead in some of the grasses and birds and other wildlife because they can't get out of it.
That went right to the
It did, yeah, I couldn't believe it when she told me.
Baby ponds.
Yes. So again, to our education mandate, we've had 12 workshops to train frag fighters, volunteers. We've had 9 community cut days where we have gone out as staff and brought together the community to tackle a particular area. And with our working with the community, we've been able to identify community champions so far. We hope to do more so in 2018. And these are really committed volunteers that are able to rally their communities, organize them, and help to tackle that local situation as a group on their own. So it really is facilitating the larger group action that's needed to tackle this plan.
Remember, 700 sites for this little government. We need help.
So much so that some areas have really become inundated and overwhelmed by this invasive species. These are pictures from Oliphant area, where the marina area, it was just overcome, just continuous with Phragmites. And so we were able to, with the help of Nature Conservancy of Canada, who was a great supporter for us in 2017, bring in a company that has an amphibious cutter. And so they can go out into shallow and deep water and remove these monocultures of invasive Phragmites. And then with a barge, the volunteers gather all that material onto barges, we bring it back to shore. We have a scoopy thing.
There you go.
It only gets worse if I have to do math. And we'll put it into a dump truck in the South Bruce. The municipality graciously buried the soil, buried the Phragmites in the landfill. In the North Bruce, we have support from the municipality to burn the Phragmites and the gravel pit. And so just in that 2.5 days, we didn't get to all of it. Using this amphibious cutter and a suite of volunteers to bring it in, 9,600 kilograms were removed. And there is still much more to do in the Oliphant area and the adjacent fishing islands. But the idea here is that if you can make that first big impact in a few days, that community can then respond to a more manageable situation and continue that fight on their own. Then I want to turn now to our ecological monitoring. And so in all we do like to have some basis that shows support for why we are doing it. And one of the key ones is to keep track of how our water conditions are changing. And we do have a speaker tonight that's going to speak to it. So I'm just going to let you know that in 2017, we had 6 volunteers that were trained to do our water sampling. And so we support them by paying for what's called cabin training, where they can understand how to very accurately and consistently sample the water for water chemistry processing at ALS laboratories, or to take benthic convertible samples, which would then go to our next application. And we have 5 years of water chemistry data that we're going to hear about. And very exciting, in 2017, we were able to sample throughout the winter. It may not look very exciting, but it's actually really important because this is a time of year where you can get a lot of movement of nutrients out of the system. And so we want to know what's happening through the winter season, especially if you have rain events on snow or some other unusual situation. We want to monitor what's happening through the winter as well. So it's very exciting improvement to our sampling regime.
I have a trick question for you. When in the year
Are you most likely to have movement of phosphorus and other nutrients into the water? The winter, or the spring, or the summer? Is there a prize? Maybe.
What do you think? I'm hearing winter. Boy, this is a clever crowd. It's winter. Who would have thought, eh? Yeah. Very impressive.
So some other monitoring that we do include, as I alluded to, the benthic invertebrate sampling, which is used to reflect aquatic habitat quality. And so we have 5 years of sampling, and we currently have an expert on benthic invertebrates analyzing the data and writing reports that we will hope to be able to present on our website in the summer. We also do salamander monitoring. Now this is a long-term project, a very interesting one in conjunction with the National Park, that is looking at salamanders both inside the park, the protected area, and outside the park in a couple of other sites. And salamanders are a very sensitive creature, and so they're very responsive to changes in their habitat. And so there has been a huge protocol developed around understanding habitat health through monitoring salamanders. And so we have 9 years of continuous data from that monitoring project. And we also have our dark sky monitoring that goes on. As we know, or I hope you know, the Bruce Peninsula is a dark sky friendly area where we have beautiful dark skies that we can enjoy, as knowing that it is a habitat for many animals and the ability for us to enjoy it. So we actually do some measurements of dark sky quality with various sampling locations by our volunteers. This is led by Mike Workington. We have volunteers Ron Steinecker and Doug Cunningham that lead the teams to collect that data. In addition to the information we have from our ecological monitoring, we also have other information that we gather through time, utilizing the expertise of academics and other experts in the industry. So here is an example of what we did this year. I've talked a little bit about these unique pond features that are created by cold water springs. So this is a ground level view of that pond feature I showed you from the aerial earlier. So it is an extremely unique system. And in order to understand the karst system and continue to contribute to our understanding of this complex system, this year we had a professor from the University of Western Ontario, Dr. Chris Smart, produce some high-resolution maps for the Judges Creek area. The maps both show the surface and also show canopy height. But this picture here, which is shown here, shows the ground surface in Judges Creek to a resolution of 2 meters. So these are incredible ones that if they were on your computer, for example, you had a powerful computer, you could zoom right in to identify features on the ground and right through the canopy. So in areas such as these that are covered by cedar, where you cannot see the surface through normal aerial photography, you would be able to identify hidden features on the ground. And in this way, we've been able to identify some other spring locations within this karst system. So we are continuing to augment the information that we have collectively on the Bruce Peninsula about the unique karst hydrology system that we have.
Which of course creates our vulnerable aquifers, right? Which is a very important reason for understanding, because there is a much quicker connection between surface water flows and the groundwater from which the wells are grown.
And I would like to now turn to two other very important components, starting with the youth in our community, which we value highly, as all of us do. We have our youth director, Brooklyn. We've all met, and has helped us greatly. We offered awards to 2 students at the local school, and we create jobs for students in the summer, one of which, Jane Batters, with our Bayside Astronomy Program Manager, and other student positions, largely funded through Canada Summer Jobs. And just to emphasize again here, education, we try and build it into all that we do. Understanding what to do, why it's important, and what are the results. So in our variety of workshops, our septic system workshops, our pragmatics workshops, our meetings, such as our pasture meetings, our tours, and our events, such as the Forest Fair and Earth Day event, where we connect with the community, open up the conversation, and enjoy the natural environment. We provide certification opportunities, such as the cabin training for water sampling. And we produce scientific reports. So report on our water quality that we hear about tonight, our CARS report that we did last year, and the benthic invertebrate aquatic habitat report that will be forthcoming as examples, along with salamanders and many other reports that we produced through our 16 years of existence. So just ending off, if you would like to join us and volunteer with us, we could really use your very valuable time and expertise for a variety of opportunities that we could use some help with, from communications and websites, volunteer coordination, bench management, membership, data management, getting out on the ground, planting trees, which we're doing next week, 24th, Amanda? Yeah. Great. And water sampling. Always need lots of volunteer help on that. So thank you. I will now turn it over to Elizabeth for the chair's report.
Thank you, Catherine. That was very informative, and it provides an opportunity to see the breadth of the work that we do. Before I get into the formal chair's report, I would like to say a couple of words of thank you. First, we have a person that has for many years worked for the Biosphere, and he has provided a great service to us. And I just want to acknowledge the tremendous contribution that he has made over the years. And so Sean LaPierre has been instrumental in many of our major successes. He was the driving force behind the creation of our Community Conservation and Stewardship Plan, which is a fundamental document that has allowed us to lead conservation and restoration efforts over the last, I guess it's 5 years almost, Sean, since we developed that darn thing. He was instrumental in framing the Fragmites project, and which now has been ably taken over by Amanda. Thank you, Amanda, for all your hard work on this. And I think Brooke also helps you in that area as well. Sean also developed a strategy related to forest connectivity, because as most of you know, we have the largest connected forest in southern Ontario, which is an extremely important part of our habitat, and it's important to preserve. So we're looking at ways that we can work with willing landowners to help preserve the forest connectivity. So thank you for that leadership. And I know that you were involved in shoreline stewardships. And one of the things that I think is very exciting is he completely scripted and produced the 3 videos that are on our website. And we have them at the access points at Alliance Head, for example, and they're accessible by QR code. So we were one of the first to be able to do this. So thank you, Sean, on behalf of the Biosphere Association. Good, and so that is something that is important. The contributions of people are important to recognize. We also have someone else who has spent 5 years, and you've seen the tremendous work related to the 6 Streams project. And so I'd like to thank Niels Monk.
John?
Well, I do. Yes, that's right.
What's that? Oh, you just wait. So the human spine is actually curved. And the reason it's curved is so that it can absorb shocks and bend when it comes under load. Anyways, yesterday, Niels was lifting a 60-foot gate out of the mud, and he hurt his back. The problem is his back is too straight, and Niels has been celebrated in print, in literature, as being straight back, and a straight back Marlboro man. So Niels has also won the Agricultural Award of Merit for all his work with farmers. It's really hard. Farmers, we are a tough audience, and Niels actually can interface with the farmers just tremendously. I think it has to do with this Marlboro man. So, sorry, that goes where the Award of Merit was, and it should be there 50 years from now. Thank you.
Okay, now I'll go through the report that we've been working on. My report this year will focus primarily on the second function, which is sustainable economic development. As you know, our whole purpose is to build community capacity, so to help the community to grow, and also commitment to conservation and sustainable economic development while achieving concrete environmental goals. So one of the things that I think is important is that in the last 5 years, we have raised over $2 million in grant money that we have invested in this community. So we have undertaken a range of projects, and when you think 5 years ago, the grant money that you're getting was about $40,000. So we have worked very, very hard to identify funders and people that wanted to work with us in order to achieve the kinds of results that you heard about, that Catherine was talking about. So what has this done? In 2012, we had no employees, but now we have created 5 year-round professional positions. This is adding to this community in immeasurable ways. Catherine has achieved the results as an executive director by working half-time. We have another half-time position. And then we have 3 full-time positions filled by individuals in the needed 26 to 34, 5-year age cohort. If you were here last year, you know that one of the things that we looked at was input into the economic development strategy, and it's crucial that this community, to maintain its schools and its hospital, needs growth in the 26 to 34 age cohort. So this is quite important. We've created 7 contract positions, including some over the winter when many people are in need of work, and many are positions that are students. And I know it breaks my heart when we look at the positions that come into us for these student positions in the summer. As parents, we celebrate. We absolutely are ecstatic when they get into these very difficult programs and they graduate, and there's no way for them to get experience. There are no jobs. So this is one of the things that I cherish, that we are able to provide students with work that will help them grow and learn and be mentored. You've met some of the people that they're mentored by, so I think this is very, very important. And one of the things that we do, we also believe very much in creating sustainable economic development. And we, in the last 5 years, have invested in this community with local suppliers and with local contractors, $1.67 billion. And I think that's a very strong achievement, and we're very, very pleased, because that stimulates local business. And if you all remember back to that economic class many, many years ago, you realize that when you have $1, that often there's a multiplier effect, and it creates $7 other. So this is quite an important stimulator of the local economy. I'm going to talk about some of the specific sustainable economic development activities we've undertaken. How many of you have heard of Bayside Astronomy? Okay, so what it is an opportunity to experience the wonders of the heavens with guidance from amateur astronomers. And we have 10 people that are amateur astronomers, led by Mike Workington, who is the chair of the Dark Sky Committee. And believe me, they're committed. John Rogers is one of them. In his case, it might be another.
Should be committed.
Anyway, so what they do is they lug their own personal telescopes down to Lion's Head on Fridays and Saturdays nights. And they, as volunteers, offer free stargazing. But before the people can have an opportunity to understand the celestial object in the night and to see through the telescopes, they first learn why it's important to protect the night sky. I think shortly people will begin to realize that just as water quality is an important part of habitat, so too is a natural dark night sky. It's a critical part of habitat, and that understanding is growing, and it's growing through Bayside, because we have now given this message to over 10,000 people, and they have also learned what they can do to protect the natural night sky by using something as simple as a dark sky lighting fixture, which directs the light down, which I'd never heard of until I moved here. So, but now 10,000 people know. It is a stimulator of economic development because we have evidence that visitors are planning trips to Greece based on the Bayside Astronomy program. It's interesting. I get calls. My number was on the website. Mike, thank God, took that over. But starting in February, that Bayside Astronomy program. So it is definitely something that people are using to base their visits to Greece.
And Jake Goddard's in the audience, who's our second summer in a row person,
Yes.
is doing a great job at the Sunday by Singing Sands Dark Skies programs.
Yes, that's great. And I mean, I think that's another sign of the kind of quality experience that we give because students want to come back. Okay, good. Our latest venture, and Graham Thomas is here, who is our new program manager. Sean, I refuse to hire anybody else called Sean. If Sean Lepere started, and then Sean Skinko was the next, and the park hired both of them. So, anyways, so what is Eco Adventures? It's 1 day, half day, and 3 day guided adventures for a fee. What we're doing is seamlessly employing ecological learning with fun activities such as hiking or biking and snowshoeing, cross-country skiing. The target market is the GTHA, Hamilton, for those of you knowing if it's a snowy area, and southwestern Ontario. There's no 3 day adventures during the peak tourist season. We don't need to attract people here, but we do need to be able to offer them an alternative to the park in the very busy season. We have 18 adventures developed and piloted, including a 3 day winter adventure and a 3 day spring adventure that's coming up this weekend. And Sean Skinko, I have to note, he did provide great dedication in program development. It's now a national park. Thanks also to the program advisory committee. We have one member here, Daryl Coe, So thanks for that, Don Phillips, Rod Steinacker, and Laura Sigerman, and Kevin Harper. They all experts in their fields and provide guidance to Graham. Funding, we have state funding awarded from the Ontario Children Foundation and Mountain Clifton Co-op. Believes in what we're doing. They've given us $20,000. Biosphere Foundation and the Regional Tourism Organization. We've also applied for additional incubation funding to Greenbelt in May. It's looking promising. We were invited to the second stage. What is the objectives of Eco Adventures? Well, first of all, in keeping with our mission, we want people to understand the ecological significance of this very special place. And we want to inspire them and equip them with the skills to protect it. We want to build their confidence and their skills to enjoy the outdoors. It's surprising how many people, because we live up here and many of you have been here for many generations, you're very comfortable outdoors, but some of the people coming up on the side are not. We want to work in concert with other tourist operators and position the Bruce as a year-round eco-adventure destination. We also want to spatially distribute summer visitors across the peninsula. So as to relieve congestion at the park, develop show and winter season tourism experiences, and also a goal is to generate revenues for Biosphere Association because as you saw by that deficit that we were running, we do need to generate revenue. And we want to expand our donor base of volunteers. BPBA led a very important initiative, the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan initiative, in a few of their key recommendations were to identify, develop, and promote key sustainable tourism itineraries aligned with adventure tourism, hiking, cycling. And when I say they, I mean the consultant that was hired by a group of organizations to look at developing a sustainable tourism management plan. And they also suggested that the shoulder and winter seasons be developed. And we have the chair of that committee here, Brian McCaddy. He's also been very involved with sources of knowledge. So, next, please. So, Eco Adventures, in a way, was ahead of the curve. We began business plan development in the fall of 2016. And thank you to the many people here in the audience that have provided comments. We've tried to take these comments into consideration as we develop the program going forward. We've been undertaking partnership development. We've secured the seed funding, and the first adventure was actually offered by Sean back in May 2017, a year ago. And so, where's Graham? There. Yeah, there's Graham. You want to stand up, Graham? So he's the new program manager. You may remember Graham. He is the owner of Harvest Moon Bakery, and so he's now taking this on part-time to make it a success, and doing a great job. Thank you, Graham. And so please let your friends and family know of this amazing opportunity. If you're sick of them, send them out for half a day. They'll come out and they're happy. Thank you. Maybe take you out for supper, right? The critical thing about this is all net proceeds are used for the Biosphere's conservation and stewardship work, so that we continue to do an important job. And one of the things that I'm excited about is that we want to develop volunteer guides. So we want to develop a certification program for volunteer guides to help us expand our capacity. So if that kind of thing interests you as a volunteer activity, please let us know. So I think that, I hope.
Elizabeth, I just have one thing.
Yes,
we've got eight different adventures planned throughout the summer, and I believe 6 of those 8 are now on the website, detailing the program, the price, the dates, and times. So if you're interested in any of those offerings, just go to the Biosphere website to meet the program.
Good, thank you. So I hope that you see that through this talk that we've had tonight, that we are building and trying to build communities' commitment and capacity for
conservation, and
sustainable economic development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth works tirelessly on things like that. And I was actually amazed. I learned myself. I thought we were working on eco-terrorism all the time. Maybe that's something we can branch into. Okay, next on our agenda. We have had how many years have we done this, Catherine? This is Dr. Gilman, right?
now Dr. Gilman.
Yeah. And thank you for coming. We know you've driven 3.5?
3 hours.
3 hours. And then Peninsula driving time, that means 6 hours. You gotta go back. There we go. Catherine's going to give us our summarize our water quality results for 2017. By the way, we're up to 4 viewers on our live stream. It's more than 4 times more than what I was expecting. Is it actually people in the audience? I think Amanda might be one of them. Dr. Jim.
Thank you. Right, so good evening, everyone. I'm super thrilled to be here tonight and spend a little bit of time talking about the 6 Streams project. And just thinking about the data that we've collected and how these streams have been changing over the past 5 years. Because now that we have 5 years of data, we can actually say with some confidence that these streams are definitely changing in response to the Catalyst Solution project. So that's pretty exciting. Before we get into that though, I just want to briefly go over some of the ways that we measure these streams and document how they're changing over time. And in this project, we measure a whole suite of different water chemistry variables, and we're just going to go into some of the key ones that are really helpful in noting changes in water quality. And one of those is total suspended solids, which is exactly like the name implies. It's material suspended in that water column. And it can look somewhat like we have on that beaker on the left-hand side there. We have that more or less crystalline water, not much going on in terms of sediment floating within. And then that can range all the way over to one you see on the right, which is fairly sediment rich. And over time, that material will settle out, as we've already discussed this evening. And when it settles out, that can be pretty negative in terms of the different organisms that live in streams and also the downstream lake environment. When those sediments settle onto the bottom of the streams, that can have deleterious effects for the invertebrates that live there, particularly the more sensitive ones. It can also have negative impacts for fish that might be living in that environment. It's particularly sediment heavy. It can irritate their gills, which can be potentially lethal in the long term and compounded with other factors. And it can also inhibit reproduction from fish because it can actually suffocate the eggs when they're placed on the bottom of different aquatic environments. So total suspended solids is definitely an important measure, and it can have some pretty important impacts on our ecosystem. So definitely something to look for. We also measure total phosphorus, which is often linked pretty strongly with livestock in particular. And so phosphorus is important because most things need phosphorus to grow, particularly algae and other nuisance vegetation that can occur both in our streams, but also downstream in our lake environments, which can lead to eutrophication events, which ultimately can lead to lower oxygen levels, which of course also leads to things dying. So measuring phosphorus is important. We can actually measure our plant growth, if you will, within our stream by using measures like chlorophyll A content. So that will give us an indication of how much algae is actually suspended within our streams by taking that measure, or other plant activity. And then we also have measures of total organic nitrogen. So again, nitrogen is another one of those nutrients that most things need to live, plants included, and that has similar effects like phosphorus. Although nitrogen often is definitely linked to cattle-based activity, but it's often more tightly linked to cropping activities. So those are the main water chemistry variables we're going to talk about tonight. I first want to start us off with Black Creek. So Black Creek is located within an area of minimal agricultural activities. And this was done intentionally. So this serves as a reference stream, because we know from year to year there are going to be natural changes that occur in our region. And we want to be able to quantify that to say, are these changes occurring because of the exclusion activities that we've been doing, or is it occurring because of natural variation or perhaps these wider changes that are occurring across that landscape? So by having a stream like Black Creek, we are able to quantify that. And generally, across the years, we've seen the water chemistry is relatively stable. So you can actually look at this. And so I'm going to be presenting a series of tables like this, but I promise I'll walk you through them. And you can also see that I've got these orange, they're called orange, rectangles that appear. And that's going to be a consistent feature. And I'm just identifying some interesting years that we see across these 5 years of data. So you can see over here, I've got our different water chemistry parameters, the total suspended solids, total phosphorus, chlorophyll A, and total organic nitrogen, as we just went through. And then we have the 5 years and their corresponding values. And so I have 2013 noted here, because it was our first year, but it also happened to be the year where we had the highest levels of total suspended solids within this site. And that was naturally occurring. And so if we look across our years, we consistently have much lower levels. And when you take a statistical approach with this, it's actually statistically true. So 2013 just happened to be a naturally high year, which is important for thinking about how things have changed through time at our agricultural sites. So when we compare this through those 5 years, you can say there's some evidence that there's been a natural decrease in total suspended solids. When we look at our other variables here, including total phosphorus, chlorophyll A content, and our nitrogen, those orange bars that I have here represent that things are relatively stable. We have some ups, we have some downs, but there's no clear trends, which is more or less what we would expect to see in our reference stream. I also have 2016 highlighted, and this is going to be a fairly consistent trend in this data. And that's because 2016 was weird, and you can see it in the water chemistry there. So 2016 and 2015 had a lot of precipitation events. And we were sampling during those times, because that's a good idea to get those baseline conditions, but also the extremes to really understand these streams. And in 2016, we just had a lot of these more intense precipitation events, which causes the streams to be running faster and a lot more material to enter into them. So we see that in the form of a slightly uptick in terms of our total suspended solids, as well as an uptick in our chlorophyll A content, with a slight pairing as well with our total organic nitrogen. So that's what the streams were looking like in a more natural context. We're going to move on to Judges streams. So Judges Creek.
Crick.
Sorry, little nerve. So this creek. Oh no.
No, you don't take the week, I'm teasing.
Drains Brazil Flats. And when we started this project in 2013, this was arguably one of the most degraded sites in terms of the water quality that we were measuring there. And since then, approximately over 27,000 cattle have been excluded from this site. When we look at that in terms of water chemistry, we are seeing changes. And I would argue the most exciting changes that we're seeing is in terms of our total suspended solids here. So if you look in 2013, we were looking at just about 40 milligrams per liter. And over the past 5 years, we've dropped that down to just around 16. So, if my math is correct, we've had about a 60% decline in our total suspended solids. So that's super exciting, and it's statistically significant. So both of those are good news stories. We haven't quite got it down to where we'd like to see it in terms of the government's provincial guidelines for total suspended solids. So there's still room to improve, but definitely a good trajectory and encouraging signs on that front. In terms of our total phosphorus levels in this particular stream, we see things go up, we see things go down. It's hard to say that we have a consistent decrease in terms of total phosphorus in this stream. And the similar trends are also seen for our total organic nitrogen. We do see that our chlorophyll A content has actually gone up at this stream if you compare it to 2013. So in 2013, we had 0.75. And in 2017, we're looking at 2.29 milligrams per liter. So it's definitely increased in that front.
Could that be from greater light penetration or?
Yes,
okay.
yeah. So, thank you. Good question.
I see that science teacher.
Exactly. So we have maintained levels in terms of our nutrients that we're seeing and concentrations in this stream. And we've had our total suspended solids go down. So if you have equal amounts of nutrients, but more light, plants like all of those things. So that's going to actually increase their growth at this point. Yeah. Okay, so talking about Stokes River, this is one of the largest streams that we are monitoring, and arguably one of, again, the more degraded streams that we've monitored initially. And at this site, we've also had quite an impressive effort of excluding cattle, with over 1,400 cattle excluded at this point. And again, this is something that you can see in terms of the water chemistry. So when we look at our total suspended solids, again, very, very similar trends to what we just saw at the previous system. Except this one is particularly exciting and arguably my favorite stream, because if you look at 2013, we had values at 14 milligrams per liter in terms of total suspended solid. And now, in 2017, we're down to 4, which means we're approaching reference stream conditions, and this stream is now within the recommended guidelines in terms of total suspended solids. So it's arguably under a level of total suspended solids that's limiting any negative impacts on any natural organisms living there. So I think pretty exciting. When we look at it in terms of our total phosphorus and total organic nitrogen, again, we see a very similar story where things are going up, things are going down, but we can't say with strong confidence that we have a decrease yet. And that, again, corresponds with that higher level of chlorophyll A content because we've got more light and about the same amount of nutrients in these streams currently. And again, I've just got 2016 highlighted here for the same reasons that I've shown previously. We just have some really weird numbers because of those high precipitation events, which are corresponding with an increase in energy. All right, so the next one is Old Woman's River. And this one definitely has signs of disturbance when we initiated the project, but less or so, just because there's a little bit less cattle activity at this site. And that also corresponds with the amount of exclusion that's happened at this site. So there's been over 500 cattle excluded at Old Woman's River. And we're going to see a very similar story here, where again, we have seen our total suspended solid values decrease, definitely starting to get down into our reference stream conditions, so even better than governmental guidelines, which is exciting to see. And a lot of these trends, when we're seeing these decreases, actually beautifully pair when we've had the most intensified exclusion efforts occur. So cattle exclusion efforts aren't always linear from year to year. Some years, more exclusion sites are placed at these streams than others, and the water chemistry at these sites actually really nicely pairs with those trends, giving us more evidence that the water, in terms of total suspended solids, is really responding to those treatments. And then we can see again, looking in terms of total phosphorus, not a lot of clear trends that pairs as well with our total organic nitrogen. and then a marginal increase again in our total chlorophyll A content. So the trends across these streams are actually remarkably similar until we get to unnamed stream. Unnamed stream has a story of its own. So this stream is interesting because there isn't a lot of opportunity to actually exclude cattle just due to the agricultural activity that's occurring within this basin. A lot more cropping activity opposed to cattle directly accessing it as a water source. As a consequence, we have not actually had cattle exclusion at this site. And the water chemistry reflects it. So this is actually a great negative control, if you will, that the water chemistry is relatively constant at this site when we haven't been doing anything at it. The only exclusion to that is 2017. So we'll just start with total suspended solids. You see from year to year, it's almost somewhere around 15 to 18 milligrams per liter. Our total phosphorus is somewhere around 0.3. Chlorophyll goes up and down a little bit, but again, hard to make any clear trends with that. And similar story for our total organic nitrogen. However, 2017 happened, and 2017 did not follow any of the rules that we had seen for this stream. So at this point, we see really notable decreases in all of the measures that we are seeing, perhaps less so with the chlorophyll A content. So we see our total suspended solids going from 17 milligrams per liter down to closer to 7. So that was a notable decline. We're seeing a decrease in our total phosphorus and as well as our total organic nitrogen. And Niels had to kind of give me the inside scoop on what was going on with this particular site. And it turns out that there's been a fairly dramatic change directly upstream from where we've been monitoring in terms of the water management by the landowner there. So they had enclosed those streams and probably with limiting direct runoff from different agricultural activities into those streams. And it seems to have had a fairly notable impact. Interesting, unexpected, but cool to see. And then the last stream that I want to tell you about today is called the Swan Lake Drain. Again, it has evidence of disturbance, but not nearly as intensified as what we saw with Judges or with Stokes. And at this site, we've had over 200 cattle excluded. And again, this is, I feel, well shown within the water chemistry. So very similar trends that we've seen. Our total suspended solids are showing evidence of a decline. It's not nearly as dramatic as the other sites, but it also didn't have as far to go. The other sites were somewhere around 40 milligrams per liter, and we started at 7, which was within those guidelines. Total phosphorus is fairly consistent for what we've seen across these regions, as well as our total organic nitrogen goes up and down, paired with an increase in our chlorophyll A content. That said, this site had dramatic increases during 2015 and 2016. It was very responsive to those different precipitation events. And we've seen a very tight relationship between that total phosphorus and total organic nitrogen content and chlorophyll A content. So that relationship was very strong here and very indicative that those nutrient levels were to go down, this stream would be particularly responsive. So taking it all together, I think we've got some good evidence that the sites that have had the most intensified cattle exclusion efforts have shown some of the greatest improvements. That is particularly true at the Judges and Stokes streams. But a consistent trend is that we're seeing a decrease in our total suspended solids at these streams in association with those cattle exclusion structures. That's exciting and good to see. And then in general, coming back to the idea about nutrient inputs, it's possible that those maintained levels that we're seeing in the water chemistry are potentially supporting that chlorophyll A. Just room to continue to improve at these sites. All right.
Have one?
Oh, sure.
The phosphorus, your nutrients are dissolved measuring
Well,
dissolved?
everything we're measuring is in aquatic phase, so it has to be dissolved.
Okay. So you're getting the sense that the phosphorus and nitrogen are kind of the same. True, despite the fact that you've got improvements in suspended solid. But of course, suspended solid, the finer end, silt and the clays especially,
Yep.
carry those materials with them.
Definitely. Phosphorus in particular, though.
Yes.
Nitrogen moves differently.
Yes. And so you're lowering the total load just
Yeah.
by decreasing that.
Yes, it's not in, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So we're not measuring that, the phosphorus that would be bound to that sediment phase, yeah.
Yeah. So the load is still decreasing, even though the chemistry of the dissolved fraction isn't changing.
Yeah, we're still having the same runoff that's entering its liquid phase, but the amount that's suspended in the stream in the solid phase would be captured in this measure.
And so stream entombment seems to have seems to improve quality.
It seems to. I mean, this is a N of 1, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt, but that seems to be what happened with that particular site, which was fascinating, I thought.
And
it has such a
and-
dramatic effect.
Right, yeah. Is entombment considered not the opposite of the best management practice?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So entombment, stream entombment, I don't know, is that the actual word, Niels, or?
What's the word that was called? I'm not sure if there's a-
Oh, okay. Niels and I come up with different adjectives for drainage practices. So entombment, it's not recommended to entomb like a channel. I've heard that. I don't know if it's true or
I
not.
think there's negatives and positives with it, right? So the inverts and a variety of different life forms that are utilizing that stream are no longer going to have a lot of other resources to maximize that. There's no light there, right?
Yeah.
Things are no longer going to be able to utilize that environment. But I think the other side of that coin is it has less direct runoff into those streams. And that's what we're seeing in terms of water quality. I think the benthic invertebrate measurements would reflect the lack of supportive environment for other life forms. Yeah.
Can I just ask, do you sample at one spot on each of these streams, or do you sample several spots along them?
They're measured at 2 spots along the stream. So one is at the mouth and then further back.
Just 2 spots, okay.
Yeah.
I was intrigued by your standard deviations, that's why I asked.
Okay.
Some of them are larger than the mean,
That's not uncommon.
okay.
So partially, the reason why that's not uncommon is because we're intentionally targeting the sampling program so that we have baseline events, and then we get these precipitation events. And that's when you get these quite notable changes in the water chemistry. And you want that because it's a true representation of the stream environment, but that increases your standard deviation. Yeah.
Are there many other organizations, either municipal or government, that are doing this same type of sampling and work?
I think that's a layered question. So stream monitoring is definitely something that is undertaken by conservation authorities, but not necessarily with this same targeted program. This is paired with cattle exclusion efforts. I think that adds a unique aspect to it, to really understand the impacts of that effort. Does that answer your question? Kind of. I think the answer is yes and no.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not sure if Daryl's question answered this or not, because it ended up getting a little too technical for me, so I'll go back and kind of just get in my own.
For sure.
Thinking. We talked about how there was like 1.5 tons of phosphorus that was kept out of the streams.
Right.
So when you look at those numbers and the phosphorus doesn't seem to change much, how much more tons of phosphorus do you have to take out to make that phosphorus number move?
That's a good question. So I'm not actually part of calculating that other phosphorus number, so perhaps who would be the best person to speak to how the calculation of that number? I think that's what you're really getting at, right?
Yeah.
It's a number from Ag Canada. What they gave us is a formula to calculate phosphorus reduction based on this formula, and you have the number of cattle and then you have the formula, and it calculates what the phosphorus reduction would be.
Right.
I think one of the things that's happening here, and perhaps I want to comment on further, is that with the reduced humidity, you have, as John was saying, you have an increase in the amount of sunlight getting, which stimulates, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
so there's two things going on. So there is also that decrease in total suspended solids, which carries phosphorus inherently. So phosphorus is one of those compounds that really happily binds to clays, but soils in general. So we're not capturing that decrease directly. We're seeing the decrease in the sediment, but we're not measuring that decrease in phosphorus that's being exported downstream. So that's part of that.
And that's what Jeremy's kind of.
Yeah, so that's a connected thought. And then the other part of why we're seeing the change in stream in terms of that chlorophyll is because we've had that change, that good change in terms of total suspended solids. But the dissolved phase phosphorus and nitrogen, which are readily available in that stream right now, are still being maintained.
So I guess one of the things that, one of the next series of actions that we would take is the importance of that vegetative buffer.
Yes.
So with the vegetative buffer, which you can all help with, we need planters. We put the vegetative buffer along the stream banks because remember they've been trampled, right, by the cattle, and so they're bare, and there isn't the protection of the sunlight and so we have that.
So a riparian buffer does two things. It will have vegetation on the actual riparian zone, so on the stream edges, and those plants like nitrogen and phosphorus too. So they will take up that nitrogen and phosphorus that's moving towards the stream and kind of function as a filter to prevent it from actually getting into the stream. And then it can also provide this kind of shading effect to help maintain these cool stream environments that many specific fish species really enjoy. Yeah.
I'll use the mic for the poor people that are watching.
Oh, okay.
For the poor people that don't know the microphone. So my question is following up on Mary's question there about the cattle. I think what Mary was getting at is how many more cattle should we remove from the edge of the stream so that we get, before we reach diminishing returns? And I think that's a very complicated question that you couldn't answer tonight, but I think you have to do a lot of calculating or research to figure out.
I think one thing I might throw into the mix is we're doing storm sampling primarily, whereas injection of phosphorus by cattle is continuous in that low flow rates. So we're probably looking at phosphorus that's running off the fields, not so much phosphorus that's been added by cattle at the low rates. So those low flow rates might carry more phosphorus. And as you know, that solution to pollution is dilution. So you get a lot of water, you actually get a decline in the phosphorus concentration. So there might be the stormwater sampling might be masking the effect of the cattle exclusion.
Any, yes?
Do you guys have data for the nature of cover ducking for like swarming the unnamed?
Niels, I feel like this is a question for you.
Yeah, no, that's a program we just started. We just started supplying seed for that, and so we really have these aerial coverages and hopefully we're seeing some effects from right now.
And that's another, sorry to interrupt, but that's another complexity where you introduce a cover crop and the cover crop takes up phosphorus, and then you get a stormwater event and the plants lice in the winter and the phosphorus goes into the stream again. So sometimes they're a benefit and sometimes they aren't.
Yes.
I was just thinking, beyond the cattle, there's a low till or no till plowing you're doing and other things, planting and that kind of stuff. It's hard to add all these, develop a model that plugs all these things in, obviously, especially for a small organization. a lot of volunteers and that kind of thing. But I think it's fair to say, especially in a climate change scenario, we're getting more, drastic rainfalls and storms.
Yeah, definitely.
That this kind of work that is being done here is going to be so much more important throughout the years, given those drastic storm events.
Absolutely.
Can't exactly measure it, but I think it's fairly intuitive that there's some best management practices.
Yeah, I mean, there is the potential to move forward and actually separate out, what is the effect from changes in no-till versus cattle exclusion. We could go there potentially if we wanted to, but I feel pretty confident that the cattle exclusion events are definitely having a positive effect. But you're right, the no-till is definitely a factor. You can separate out essentially what the percentage is that goes to each factor eventually if we wanted to.
Right, and septic system improvements too is also another factor. We're targeting septic systems to back on. We're targeting septic systems to back onto water courses. So by correcting those inputs, it'll really have an effect too. Well, by the end of this year, we'll have 30 of them finished, completely faulty systems. So that will also be an input that it's hard to distinguish between them, I guess.
Might be time for more caffeine measurements?
Yes. Maybe maybe mention that, because that's sort of the leading edge thing that we were doing.
Yeah, so I think it was 2015, we did caffeine measurements at all of these different streams, just once in the fall to try and quantify what the human impact was in terms of septic systems, because cows don't drink coffee very conveniently. And so we could get a sense of which one of these streams is more likely being impacted by egg as a dominant factor, or potentially having at least a supplemental effect from our septic systems. We could tease that apart. And some of these egg systems we found had lower caffeine levels than even our reference stream, and then others had much higher, that gave an indication that this was a potential issue for this stream. It would be fun to do a follow-up now that we've had the septic work to see those impacts.
Yeah, Catherine says that we put it in a grant position.
Yeah, we have money.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
I was looking at the figures for each year in your tables.
Yep.
So are you targeting the streams every month, or are you just doing it sporadically when you have a runoff?
I believe, no, it's every month.
So you do a stream sample once a month, so each year, how many samples you input to that mean figure that you show?
So it's going to be from April, and I think you guys usually go till October, and it's one sampling from 2 points in each one of those streams every year.
So you got probably 12 samples for each stream.
Yeah, and that's averaging through.
And often it's during storm events. So that's best practice, is not to do it on the 12th of the month, every month. The best practice is considered to do it after a storm event, because that's when you're likely to get the greatest load into the streams.
I've got one question.
Sure.
So all the figures that you were basically showing there, you're relating it to government guidelines?
Yes.
And is that guideline, is that related to, or if you provide more context, I'm guessing it has to do with like, I guess a standard health measurement, or
So those ones, most water quality measures don't actually exist from a governmental guideline point of view. Those are very specific ones that we have. And those ones tend to correspond with in-lab experiments that have been done to show negative consequences on life that would be within the stream environment.
So in many cases, you're saying it's below the guideline, meaning it would be, I guess, acceptable to have some type of functioning ecosystem in that stream.
Yes. That said, when you do these types of projects, it's always recommended to have a reference stream like we do, because that's showing what the system should look like under ideal conditions, and that's always your target to eventually get it back to a naturalized condition. So we have targets as kind of, we are seeing that we're entering into a better state for the living organisms within those streams, but we still have room to improve to get it back to what an unimpacted stream would look like in this region. Yeah.
Do you have any, excuse me, do you have any idea how long it takes after you fix the septic system so you have these frustrated?
That's a great question. I believe, I'm not a caffeine expert, drink a lot of it, but not an expert, that caffeine is actually fairly mobile, whereas other nutrients like phosphorus would actually have more of a lag time because it naturally binds to the sediment, and so the response time from that factor would actually potentially be a bit slower.
If you're very interested in the water quality, like I really knew very little when I started to get involved, but I did work with the team here, and there's a paper back there called Water Quality. And what it does is it goes through and describes, like, for example, there's something called legacy phosphorus, which is in the stream beds. And if there's a hell of a storm, then it's stirred, then the legacy phosphorus will also be stirred up and transport down the stream. So, and then they're talking about soluble phosphorus versus, so if you are interested, there's a report back there that is written in accessible language, and hopefully it will provide more information about what we're trying to do. So I recommend that to you.
Any other final questions or thoughts about water chemistry? Yeah.
Was any consideration given before this was started to sort of real-world results, such that you would pair up with the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Barrow Bay Sports Fishing Club, for a creel census to see what actually changed downstream in the rivers, such that you would be able to see returning, rebounding fish populations, which would be a real bonus for publicity? Any thought given to that?
That was before my part of the project. I think Elizabeth, you were part of that, but I don't think that was the general scope at that point. It was just to get this exclusion effort up and see how it improved the environment. Yeah.
One of the things that we do believe in, Doug, is it? Yes? Is that in partnership. So with Barrow Bay Fish Club, we have been in touch with them. They did some good work many years ago on Judges Creek in terms of cow exclusion. So what you're suggesting is a good one. We could perhaps try and figure out how to work with the Sportsman's Club. I've actually given a talk to the Sportsman's Club and with their fish hatchery and that type of thing. So we can look at ways that we can look for other indications. One of the things that we're trying to hopefully do, and I know Niels is quite excited about it, is to get the water quality to the point in Judges where it is a cold water stream and that there is sufficient water quality to reintroduce brook trout. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know. Because there's a number of people that really care about fish, and I know that Niels gets quite excited. Do you have any comments on that, Niels? Because you've been involved right from the beginning.
No, I just think it is a really good comment from Doug, certainly to look for that as part of our end game. It really is in the infancy of this project. I mean, it will take years and years to really see real world improvements like you suggest.
It'd be nice to get a baseline to see what actually made a difference.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you all for your wonderful questions, and for tonight.
All right, can everybody hear me? Any questions in general for the association? So Doug back there and I, we went to the Canada White Science Fair together, didn't we? It was like, I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago tonight.
Canada, wow.
Yeah, we're both the same fair that Zach and Griffin were at. All right, well, oh yes, Bill.
John, are you going to have most of this information on the website?
This actually gets shredded afterwards. Yeah, we'll put it on the website. At least I assume we will. I'm certainly not going to do it, but we're down to 2 viewers, by the way. 50% decline. Retweet us on Facebook, please. I'm not a social media expert. Yeah.
This is the public questions?
Yes, this is the public questions.
There is a lot of controversy in this area about what we will refer to generally as the red line issue. And many fingers and much conversation has been pointed to the Biosphere as being a lobbying effort with the town council to forward this legislation. Given that you're a charity, et cetera, could you please affirm your political affiliations with regard to this and what your involvement is with the municipality in terms of as an advocate for this legislation, whether you are or not, and what is your position going forward on this? This is important to this community, and I would like you guys to have the opportunity to clear the air on this, if you can, once and for all, for a great many people in this community.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Because I don't know, there was a great poster around. How many of you came here to visit the poster?
I did because I made it.
Oh,
right in
don't
front
get
of
that clip part off Microsoft Word, eh? So yeah, so I guess there has been a question about our political affiliation. I knew that picture with Larry Miller was going to catch up to me eventually. Dale can talk a little bit. Dale actually, when we have Skype calls, Dale's got a setting where he sounds a lot like Stephen Hawking. So I can say you can kind of talk about the process of the.
I think to start with, it should be recognized that the municipality is bound by what the province has put forward, and the province has a planning act and policy statements under the Planning Act the municipality has to adhere to. And the municipality is basically following the guidance through their planner of what is in the policy statements of the province. And in there are things like endangered species, wetlands, areas of vulnerable soils where there might be a rush of water from the lakes, various things like that, hazard plans and so forth. The municipality has put all those things into that plan. We have had nothing to do with it. We basically, from the standpoint of our knowledge base, we've given the municipality some advice based on knowledge that we have and things that we recognize that are important from the long-term planning standpoint. However, we are just giving advice. We have no legal requirement for them to follow our advice, and that is basically where we stand on that. And from the standpoint of this association, there are various things that I think you've seen tonight that show that there is a benefit in doing various things in a planning context to make sure that the environment is protected. However, we also spoke about the fact we do not own any land, and we are not in a position, although each of us individually may own land, but we're not in a position to make the municipality do anything. And we're just like each of you in the room. We can give them some advice, and they can take that advice, or they don't have to take that advice. Yes?
I understood the question was kind of accusation that we were engaging in politics as a charity in ultra-virus of the legislation. Now, to me, the term politics can encompass everything. And it's a word that can encompass the most innocuous things, the most political things, creative party and so on. So what does the legislation say that charity can't do in terms of politics, or more maybe I'd say, how is politics defined in that kind of legislative environment?
Okay, there's two things. We're a not-for-profit corporation. That should be recognized to start. And we also have charity status. And charity status means someone can give money to us and get a charity certificate. As a not-for-profit, we are basically doing research, we're doing outreach, we're doing education to people like yourselves, but also to the municipality, because we brought a lot of new information into the municipality, and we want to make sure that we were able to pass some of that information and some of the guidance that we figure that we've come up with that should be made available to them. And that I don't see as taking a political position. I see that as basically education and outreach and education passing it on here.
I was just going to say is the politics side of it, I think is more from a partisan perspective. So, you know, if you're getting involved in an election and you're supporting the conservative over the liberal or something along those lines, that's something that charities can't do.
That is exactly
right. Obviously, I think, but it's clearly, so it's the partisan nature of politics. It's the nature of every organization, hopefully everyone in this room, to engage in democracy and to speak to their local councils, share information, share opinions. Very clearly put, they can listen to that or they can choose to disregard it, just like they can anybody in this room or anybody in the municipality. So I think the key is the partisan thing, which you don't engage with, obviously. So it's really just the democratic activities, sharing your knowledge, and we see it all today, which is extraordinary knowledge that's been developed by a very small organization.
I've only been involved in this group for 1 year now, and I've been amazed at what's been able to be done over that period of time before I got here and since I got here. Not that I had anything to do with it. I mean, Elizabeth has, and John have spearheaded a lot of this stuff over the last number of years. The amount of money that's been brought into this municipality is phenomenal, and there is no conservation authority here. And because there is no conservation authority, the conservation authority would normally pass on some of this type of information that we have been passing on to the municipality. Because there is no conservation authority, and I'm not saying there should be one, so all I'm saying is that we felt that there was a gap there, and because we did have a lot of information that was valuable information, doesn't mean that the municipality had to go along with what we were saying, but we felt it was important that they at least know that information.
And
The statement that we made to council, we did it knowing that there were a lot of people at the meetings very concerned. And so as part of the education approach that we adopted, we tried to convey and help people understand the importance of the various environmental provisions that were in the proposed bylaw. So from an educational point of view, we wanted people to understand the reasons why there might be a proposed setback on inland lakes. People hadn't necessarily realized that if a car is washed, that the soaps and solids going into the small inland lakes that we have here can cumulatively affect the quality of the water. And there are a number of other kinds of things that can affect water quality. And that we wanted people to understand and to benefit, I guess, from some of the knowledge that we have about these provisions. Obviously, it's up to the council to decide as to, in this democracy that we live in, as to what is going to happen. So I hope that answers your question. As a charity, if we so chose, and we haven't, we are allowed to, by law, engage in up to 10% of our activities that can be of a political nature, but we haven't done that. We feel that our emphasis has been on providing education and supporting provisions that we think are important, and that's essentially the route that we take.
There's one more thing. I've been involved in Miles Bay area since 1955 as a movie taught. But in my lifetime, Miles Bay has gone from basically sandy area out by Lyle Island. There was a weed bed. Now there's weeds in most of Miles Bay. You can find them along most of the shoreline. And that's a reflection of the larger number of people that have moved into the area, the large number of septic systems around that whole big bay now, and the runoff from it, et cetera, and from changing agriculture. When I was a kid, it was less intense agriculture, and now you've got much more intense agriculture in the Ferndale Flats. So the type of work that we're doing, I think, is important, and there's more things to be done. Some of the water sampling that we've been doing, I've been involved in that. I've taken the cabin training, and so has my wife. And what we found, well, I'm not going to say it that way. What I found was that we need to look at the sampling points and refocus in the future to answer some of the questions that some of you have said. Well, what about the little lake down at Barrow Bay? It's a very significant area with a lot of cottagers, and it's an enclosed bay. And the work on Judges Creek is trying to make sure that the water quality in that bay is improved, or at the very least maintained over time. So there's a lot of work that we need to do. We need to refocus as time goes on how we do the water sampling, where we do the water sampling, what things we should sample for, and how we integrate the rainfall events, whether we look also integrating the amount of rainfall that comes down the day before, maybe 2 days before, and on the day of the sampling, and integrating that back into the research that we're doing, because that will give us more information in the longer term to answer some of your questions about the fishery potentials and et cetera, and integrating it with fish sampling in that same area as Barrow Bay.
Can I just make one comment? If you're interested in some work that we're coming up to in 2018 in Little Lake area, Professor Jacqueline Coburn from the University of Guelph has a grad student that is going to be coming in to do some sediment sampling in Little Lake. Being able to take a long core down into the lake bed and then look at the record through time from Little Lake to identify periods where there has been more or less sediment being brought in from Judges Creek into Little Lake, and linking that sediment record, so pulses of sediment in particular, to land use changes. So that might give us, over the next year, some information about how our land use decisions and changes through time, over historical time, have influenced the amount of sediment coming into Little Lake.
So some very exciting and interesting research. Are there any other questions? Because it is getting late. I know. I think I'm going to have my siesta today. Anyways, I thank you all for your attention, and I hope that we continue the dialogue, and I thank all of you for making the time to come out this evening and celebrate the achievements that our staff and volunteers have worked so hard. So thank you again.
We need a motion to adjourn.